Good morning. I'm Ayya Vimala, and I'm in northern Illinois. We had rain last night during the night. It's really nice. The earth really needed it. At least the surface got some. And today it's going to be super hot, but it's going to be a lot hotter in the western and southern part of the country. So I hope everyone can stay cool, mentally and physically. I wanted to read again today from Dharma Everywhere. It's the book, one of the really wonderful books from Sayadaw U Tejaniya. And he's a Burmese monk who's still teaching today, and his writing is beautiful. So I'm going to start where I stopped yesterday. And we've been talking about doing a mindfulness meditation. And the last thing we read about was if there's thinking, he's talking about we don't want to be thinking about the things that are based on greed and aversion and delusion if the thoughts come into our head. But if they're thoughts about Dhamma we've been studying or teachings we've been listening to, if they're skillful and more wholesome thoughts, that can become an object of our meditation as well. So if you listen to a talk and then can sit, you often you'll be able to reflect on some of the aspects of the teaching. And so if we're ready to move away from our breath, that can be a good thing to be the object of our meditation or those thoughts. But if the thoughts that come up are connected with those three poisons, or sensual pleasures, or what we call distractions or defilements, then we don't want to put any attention on those. And we can just begin to see those and then let them go. And then we can investigate the ones that are not spending too much time with them, because that can just become analytical thinking. But then we can investigate them by just exploring that thought or staying with it a little longer if it came up out of a talk or a reading you've been doing. So that's what we finished with yesterday. And there are a few things I'd like to get into, because we'll get into some of the spiritual faculties that we talk about but haven't really studied a lot about. So I'm on page 34. So we're at the point where he just left us with, right now there's little stability of mind, wisdom is weak, and this is if we're a beginner, and sometimes if we've been away from our practice or not giving it enough effort, we can feel this too. There might be little stability of mind, our wisdom is weak, our effort can be feeble, and faith may be lacking. And meditation is the work of cultivating and strengthening the spiritual faculties of mindfulness and stability of the mind, and energy, faith, and wisdom. So those are pretty important qualities, and that's what our meditation is developing. Know whatever is happening. Understanding that something is not beneficial is very different from thinking or judging that something is not good. If the mind labels something as good, there is craving already. It's a very important point. With any object that arises, delusion is already on the scene. Delusion conceals an object's natural characteristics, but not the object itself, and labels it as good or bad. Then lobha or dosa, so that's the grasping, that clinging or aversion, then do their work of grasping or rejecting. So how are we going to meditate? Meditation is the recognition of gross and subtle forms of craving, aversion, and delusion, and all their relatives that are present in the mind while it is observing objects. So that's part of what we're developing with our mind. It's recognizing those things that can become defilements, and those are the things that are wrapped up in craving, aversion, and delusion, and knowing the difference between those and the ones that are skillful and wholesome and a good one to cultivate as part of our thinking. In this meditation, we practice to know whatever is happening instead of trying to make the mind still. We just acknowledge and observe the agitation with the right attitude. Because we want to learn about the nature of the mind and objects, we don't try to calm the mind down or try to remove objects. We don't interfere or control, but observe, because we want to understand the mind and objects in their natural state as they are happening. This is right view. As such, we also don't try to remove aversion when it arises. We are not trying to get rid of aversion. As soon as we try to push it away, there is more aversion. Aversion is always negative, having the quality of pushing something away. We are observing aversion because we want to know its true nature. This is what it means to meditate. This is what the mind is needing to do. So we need to observe these qualities that we see arising and we don't like. So instead of pushing them away, as we're in meditation, we can use that time just to observe, see what it's like, see what's going on. Study everything that happens. If our goal is to have understanding, we need to get to know the nature of as many objects as possible, how the mind and body processes work, and the cause and effect relationships. Merely knowing one aspect of an experience will not lead to any insight. The data is still incomplete and wisdom is still weak. It is important to study everything that happens and to be able to know all objects. So we work with any object that arises. There is no need to create experience or to keep our attention on one particular object. We need to use our wisdom along with awareness to learn about whatever is happening in that moment. Only then our view broadens, our horizon expands, and wisdom develops. We need a lot of information, sometimes referred to as data, for this to happen. Watch out for craving that can arise subtly in the form of attachment for or aversion to objects. Take a step back and observe, using the investigative mind with the right attitude working in the background. Ask yourself these questions. What is happening? Is what is happening good or bad? Is it really good or bad? Is it right or wrong? Why is it happening? Because you want to understand what is happening, you observe and investigate with intelligence. The inclination to know is already there in the mind. The observing mind with the right attitude and investigative faculties needs to be present. So you now understand a little more about the difference between focusing versus waiting, watching, and observing with wisdom. It's very good. I know sometimes people want something really fast to happen from their meditation, and they can begin to observe, begin to meditate, and begin to be observing, but they sometimes want to speed up the process so much that they jump the gun and think they've had some realization that's just going to change everything, and sometimes that can do a lot of damage for a person because they're not patient, they're not observing enough and watching, and they're kind of jumping to conclusions that they want. So the patience is really important in this process with meditation. So these are the Indriya is the Pali term for the 5 spiritual faculties. I have an itchy nose this morning. And it's called Indriya, 5 spiritual faculties. Awareness, which is sati, steadiness, and stability of mind, which is samadhi, sometimes called concentration, but I like stability of mind as a better definition. And so does Sayadaw Tejaniya. So awareness, steadiness, and stability of mind, effort or wisdom, energy. So that wisdom energy is vidya or vidya. Faith and confidence, which is saddha, and wisdom, panya, are 5 spiritual faculties that work together in the process of meditation. Mindfulness meditation is the work of cultivating or growing these spiritual faculties to work in balance. Balance being a very important word. Sati. So sati means not to forget. So that's the word that we call mindfulness, but its original meaning is not to forget. Sati means to remember. What don't you forget? You don't forget what is right and wholesome. It also means not forgetting the right attitude and right object. To be aware doesn't mean we create awareness out of what was absent before. Sati is about not forgetting. Sati is not energetic focusing. The right object for you is your experience of the body and mind. There is only the nature of mind and the nature of body. That's all there is. If you don't forget, you have awareness. If you know what is going on, you also have awareness. So what do you do to have awareness? Most people think they have to bring awareness back to some object with the idea, oh, my awareness is gone, I must have awareness again. That's a tiring way to practice. I will give you a simpler, more relaxed way. Remind yourself, when you try to get awareness, you may be focusing on an object. The mind that is already thinking wrong thoughts now tries to be aware of an object. That requires focusing energy. When you remind yourself, the mind thinks about the mind and body and awareness. When you remind yourself, the mind thinks about the mind and body, and awareness is automatically there. If you don't believe me, just ask yourself, what is happening in the mind right now? You'll notice something. What is happening in the mind right now? Is it peaceful, agitated, upset? What is happening? You'll see that you can tell what is happening in the mind, even if only roughly. You'll notice that if you think about the mind, the awareness turns towards the mind. That's what it means to be aware. Turning the mind inward. The mind is used to being aware of external phenomena. We are always paying attention to what is happening externally, and especially through the eye sense door. Mindfulness meditation turns the mind inward. So how does the mind turn inward? If you just think about turning the mind into what is happening at the 6 sense doors, I'm going to try to move this. The mind is already paying attention internally. Okay? If you just think about turning the mind into what is happening at the 6 sense doors, the mind is already paying attention internally. It is the nature of the mind to take an object, to take as an object what it thinks about. So let me read that sentence again. It is the nature of the mind to take as an object what it thinks about. Doesn't the mind go directly to your hand if you think about what is happening at your hand? If you ask, what is happening on my head? So ask yourself that now. What is happening on my head? The mind is immediately at your head. How much focusing do you need for that? Another way to turn the mind inward is to notice that the mind is paying attention to external objects. Then let the mind step back to think about what is happening in the mind and body. The mind's attention will be at the mind and body. The body is easier to notice at first because it's more apparent. But with practice, the mind will also become easy to observe. I pay more attention to the working or observing mind. Meditation begins when you wake up. Meditation begins when you wake up, not only when you reach the Dhamma hall or when you sit down. We talk about this a lot. Just think about yourself from the moment you wake up. Reflect on how you will live with awareness. If you think about yourself, you will have awareness. What is the mind feeling? What is the mind thinking? Where is the mind? What is it doing? Use the information you now have and what you know about the nature of the mind. Ask these questions from the moment you wake up. If you are able to do this, can't you practice anywhere or any time? I began my practice this way. So let's see, I'd like to read, well, maybe we should. I'll stop reading with that because the next section is on samadhi, that stability of the mind. And that is really important. So that the awareness, steadiness, and stability of the mind. So we just talked about sati. That's the first of the 5 spiritual faculties. Sati is the first. That's awareness. And the next one is samadhi, steadiness and stability. And we can read about that on Sunday. And I know Ajahn Thanissaro, or Thanissaro Bhikkhu, has a book called the Spiritual Faculties, and it's a small book, but it's a book that you can get through him if you go to Thanissaro's webpage. He's out in San Diego. His books are very good. I can give you more information about that. I have that book, so I'll talk to you about it on Sunday. But we'll continue with some reading. But why don't we just start a short meditation, just focusing on our awareness. Kind of croaky this morning. I think the rain brought some new allergies and congestion along with it. So remember the questions. Mindfulness meditation turns the mind inward. So how does the mind turn inward? If you just think about turning the mind into what is happening at the 6 sense doors, the mind is already paying attention internally. So let's just begin to sit together, and then I will close, and hopefully you can just continue sitting or standing or whatever posture you're in, if you're able to really let's focus on this, on the sati, the awareness, the mindfulness. And remember, start your daily practice with this awareness as you wake up. First thing, where's your mind? Get that mind turned inward. So close your eyes if you can, and just be aware of the body breathing. And notice how your body is coming. Your body is already remembering. When we begin to observe the body breathing, our body is already remembering that this might be the time that we sit, or one of the times, because it remembers our posture. It remembers that we turn our attention to the body breathing. So that immediately is turning our attention inward. And then as we can stay lightly with the breath, and then we can just be aware of what is coming in through our sense doors. So what's coming in through with your thoughts, what's coming in with your hearing, coming in through your ears and into that sense door, through taste, through smell, through contact. So be aware of what's coming to you. And let go of deciding it's good or bad. Remember, as soon as we decide something is good, we're moving towards craving. Or if we think it's bad, we're moving towards aversion. So, is it wholesome? Is it skillful? And we can take the time to investigate and be aware of our reactions, and be aware of what we're taking in, what we're looking at. Now I hope you can keep sitting. Just be with that awareness. Letting go of any kind of judgment or critical. We're not being critical about what's coming in our sense doors, and we're not judging ourselves. It's like becoming a bird watcher. We want to be very patient as the observer and remember what we know, and then apply what we know to what we're seeing that might be new to us. Just allow everything to be there. We can choose what we want to focus on. We don't have to feel bombarded with everything. So I leave you to keep practicing, at least for a few more minutes. And may everything that we do or say or think today be wholesome, be skillful, be filled with peace, be harmless, and may everything we do be beneficial not only to ourselves, but we know we can let it be beneficial for all other living beings as well. Sending that merit that we've developed in our own practice and sharing it with others. Thank you. I'll see you. Or you can see me Sunday morning. Have a beautiful day.